This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today our topic is making friends when you travel, and especially unexpectedly making friends. And you might see in the title that I'm also talking about monks on Facebook, because I think that's kind of unusual, but maybe it's normal. I'd love to hear if I've got any monks listening who can tell me. But anyway, I think that one of the huge pleasures of travel for me is when I get to know local people, especially in a foreign country or a place that's really different to my own. Sometimes this sort of happens by design and sometimes by chance, but in any case, I think getting to know people in another place and making friends with them, especially like a lasting friendship where you can stay in touch, is something really special and really, really adds to the experience of your trip. When I was thinking about this topic, I thought back to my friend Mohammed in Egypt. So about, probably 10-ish years ago now, I was staying near the Red Sea at a kind of a resort place. It was my one and only time to stay in a resort, and that's a story for another time. But in any case, it was near the little town of El Khazir on the Red Sea. And I spent one or two mornings I think there, exploring the town and the markets, and at a little souvenir shop I went in and I met this young man who turned out to be my about-to-be friend, Mohammed. He was selling the typical souvenirs, papyrus, ornaments, all sorts of Egyptian souvenirs. But there was really no one else around. The other people from the resort didn't come into El Khazir, it seemed. And so he had plenty of time to chat with me, and he was such a lovely guy. He was a few years younger than me. And I always remember there was a world map hanging above the counter, and we talked for ages and ages about the world. And even though he had never left Egypt, in fact, I think the furthest he'd been from El Khazir was to Luxor, like less than 2 hours away. But he knew so much about the world, and he was desperate to get out there and travel. But of course, he didn't have the financial means to do it, among other problems. But it was so good to chat to him, and we exchanged email addresses. And we kept in touch for about a year or so, maybe 2 years after that. He would talk to me by email about working at the shop. He worked crazy long hours, and then he changed jobs a couple of times, got somewhere slightly better to work. I think the last I heard he was working at the airport nearby, I think at Hurghada, and had got a new girlfriend. I got a girlfriend, and then we lost touch. His email address didn't work anymore, and it was a kind of, must have been just pre-Facebook. We didn't manage to connect in any other way, and I've often wondered where he ended up. But it was such a pleasure to get to know him and find out his view of the world, and I think that's one of those special moments of travel. And I've got a few more of those for you today. So our first guest today is Bethany Davies from Flashpacker Family. And she has 2 really great stories about making friends with local people on her travels. One was kind of by design in Vietnam, and one in Myanmar was completely by chance. And I really enjoyed these 2 stories. I hope you do too.
Travelling in Vietnam, and my sister had previously travelled there and stayed in a guest house and made friends with the girl who was working at the reception desk.
Mm-hmm.
And she had kind of not taken pity on my sister, but she thought it was strange that she was travelling alone, and had invited her out to her family, and they had a really good bond. So when I had said I'm going to Vietnam, my sister set up for me to stay at the same guest house and meet with her friend Me. And so I checked myself into this guest house and met this lovely little Vietnamese girl called Me, who was actually quite a bit younger than me. I was probably mid-20s when this happened, and she was early 20s. And we had like a couple of fun days out in Saigon, and then when she had a day off, she volunteered to take me out to her family's province.
Oh,
So
cool.
about an hour outside Saigon. So I get on the back of a motorbike with this tiny, tiny like, little 20-year-old Vietnamese girl.
Oh my goodness.
And then, like I'm at least double in size and weight of her. So I like get on the back of her bike and we go out to Dong Nai province, which is just about an hour outside of Saigon. And we go and meet her family. And so we have this lunch with her extended family. And I was a vegetarian at the time, and so they had heard about this, and they had cooked this like amazing special Vietnamese vegetarian lunch. And
that's so nice.
We sat outside, and her brother climbed a coconut tree and got me a fresh coconut to drink, and her like great aunt is out collecting snails in the riverbed, and just little children running around, and like a really lovely experience to sit with the family and eat lunch. And then after lunch, we all had to go take a nap.
Oh, that sounds perfect. I wish I could do that more often.
And these are like, pretty poor people. Like there were, like the little house that they lived in was really just only like a room with like a little side room, and it only had 3 walls. Like it was completely open. Oh, wow. Open air. So I got a hammock to sleep in. So I slept in took my nap as instructed in a hammock. Yeah, you've got to do what people tell you.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the thing, you have to you get yourself into these situations and you really have to just roll with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And if someone says, look, this is what we do, then you have to do it.
If it's taking a nap, I'm all for that.
Yeah. So that was one of the really good experiences I have had. And since that meeting, I've met up with her again.
Oh, cool.
When I went back with my family to Vietnam, we had like a really nice lunch with her and her boyfriend. And it was really great. And we're still friends on Facebook and all that. So, that's just an example of just like putting the word out saying, hey, I'm going to a country and does anyone know anyone there? And can you connect me via Facebook? Or, it is so easy now with Facebook. It wasn't so easy in the past.
Yeah, no, it's way easier now, isn't it? It's a very handy part of Facebook.
So, I always put the word out and say, does anyone have friends or, like a local connection, even just to get like a little bit of intel of something interesting to do. Yeah. Or
a good area to stay or whatever, just some on the ground perspective. Yeah. Yeah,
or something great to do with kids that, you wouldn't necessarily be in a guidebook or on anyone else's blog or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, cool.
And I'm sure Dong Nai province is not in any guidebooks or blogs, and there's no reason that you would go there unless someone had invited you. Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to tell you the next bit of when we're leaving, I get back on her motorbike, and she drives me around the little town, and we're just waving to everyone. Everyone comes out to see
the celebrity.
This great big fat foreigner on the back of a motorbike. And we just drive around slowly and we wave at everyone, and yes, everyone comes out to see it. It was really, really cute.
That's very cute. You're local royalty for the day. Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's very cool. Now, you said you had another interesting meeting with locals.
Yeah, so a few years later I went to Burma, in Myanmar, by myself, and so this is still a while ago before it was really open to tourism. It was more difficult to get a visa and there weren't as many foreigners going there. And when you're in that situation, you kind of, you're more of an oddity and you're a little bit more, I guess, you stick out more. So
sure.
People see you walking around and when you're the only foreigner walking around, you do tend to get approached more than if you're in, like a beach in Thailand or whatever, where there's a ton of Farangs around. So anyway, I go to Myanmar and I'm in Yangon and just wandering around, and it all of a sudden starts to just pour down with rain.
Oh no.
And I'm completely unprepared. no umbrella, no poncho, anything. And so I'm walking around trying not to get soaked, and I am getting soaked. And someone approaches me, and it's this Buddhist monk, and he says to me, would you like my umbrella?
Aww.
And he shares his umbrella with me, and he says, look, you won't be able to get a taxi now, so let's just duck into this tea shop. And wait, the rain will be gone in an hour or so let's just duck into this tea shop. So we duck into this little tea shop, and he buys me a cup of tea, and we sit and we chat. He wants to practice his English. He said, I'm the first foreigner he's talked to, and he's been doing English lessons for 2 or 3 years, and his English was really good, and he'd never practiced it in the real world.
Wow. So he was very pleased to meet you.
Yes, yeah. So he talked my ear off, and we chatted, and then he said, would like you to come and visit the monastery that I live in, which was also an orphanage for boys.
Oh my gosh.
So we made arrangements, and I said, look, I'm coming back. I'm leaving tomorrow, but I'm coming back through Yangon on my way back to Thailand. So like a week later, when I came back through, I had the guest house I was staying at ring the monastery and make the arrangements for me to talk to the monk on the phone. And so we did, and we set up that I was going to go the next morning, and so off I go in a taxi. I had to buy some clothes, some appropriate attire.
To wear in the, right,
yeah,
yes,
of course. The longi, which is the long kind of Burmese sarong.
Right, yeah.
So I bought myself a longi and went off to the monastery.
Wow.
Monks don't eat after midday, so they have their lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning. So he had arranged lunch for us at the monastery, and it's just the two of us sitting on the floor around a little round table, and the table's covered in all these little dishes of food, all vegetarian, and they don't cook. They rely on a local family to support them
of course,
by providing meals for them. So he had arranged like a feast for the two of us, all these little dishes of food that had been brought in. So we have lunch, and then he goes off for about maybe half an hour, and I sit with the abbot of the monastery, and he gives me a very, it was hard to talk because he didn't have as much English as my friend. But he gave me a little talk about Buddhism, and I had a Lonely Planet guidebook, which helped, with a little bit of translating, but not much. And then after that, we go for a walk around the orphanage side of the monastery. So it's just literally a long hall with some raised platforms, and everyone had a backpack, but no beds, no couches, nothing. It was just a TV at one end, and these long benches, and then some cooking pots in a kitchen at the other end.
Wow. And
there are about 30 boys that lived there from about 5 years old to about 12 maybe. And no English, nothing, it was really just come in and say hi and see how they live. And they really weren't interested in me at all. They had no desire to talk to me or anything, but it was just fascinating to see how they lived and how little they had, really nothing.
Not even really furniture or anything. What were the boys doing?
They were just kind of all sitting around and watching TV and kicking. There was one soccer ball that they had that they kicked around, and wow. Yeah, and that was it really. That was
goodness! It's I guess I see it as a good thing that they weren't excited to see the foreigner. They obviously hadn't had foreigners traipse through giving them money or toys or anything. So that's a positive. But
it wasn't like that. It was just there's someone here. Okay, we're kind of busy doing our own thing or whatever. But then, so when I was leaving for the airport the next day, and my monk friend insisted to come to the airport with me.
Oh, how lovely.
So, yeah, I know, and he sat with me until it was time for me to, go through security, and it was really the sweetest thing, and also because he was a monk, you knew that there was no, sinister intention behind it.
Yes, you could totally trust him, because if you couldn't end up trusting a monk, then the world would be a terrible place, wouldn't it? So, yeah.
He said, I'm so happy to have met you, and I'm so happy to have practiced my English, and, he was planning on continuing his English studies, and now he lives in Sri Lanka, studying
right.
Buddhism at a university there. So,
So
and we still
you're
stay
still
in
in
touch on
touch?
Facebook. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we swapped email addresses, and then when Facebook kind of became more of a thing,
Yeah.
we became friends on Facebook too.
Oh, I'm not sure how I feel about Buddhist monks being on Facebook, but I'm glad you can stay in touch.
Pictures and selfies, and
Really?
yeah.
That's excellent. Oh, cool. That is a really cool story because just that absolute sheer coincidence of being in a terrible rainstorm and being rescued by that guy who wanted to talk to you. That's such a cool way to meet a local.
It really would not have happened had it not been. I was just strolling around like a kind of a street market, and if it hadn't been for like a torrential downpour, like the biggest, fattest rain you've ever seen in your life.
Wow.
And I wouldn't have had this great encounter.
Oh, I really love that. And yeah, that's totally the kind of stuff that no one's going to see or experience normally. It's definitely not in the guidebook.
You can't plan it, and you can't force these things by like planning to go on a tour of an orphanage or anything like that.
No,
or like,
it'd be completely different, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the kind of experience that you get by making any kind of arrangements. You just have to let it happen organically, naturally, and
yeah. So you just lucky, right place at right time, and then just be open to whatever experience comes to you.
Yeah, totally.
I really love both of Bethany's stories about making new friends on her travels, and I think it just shows that being open to these kind of serendipitous meetings is so important. You can wander through a new place with your head down and not try and talk to anyone, and you'll miss out on these amazing experiences. I just love it. So my next guest today is Jeff Sandquist of the Intentionally Wandering podcast. Isn't that a great name? And we were talking about having the confidence to try new things like couchsurfing on Jeff's solo road trip around the US. But that led into talking about how taking the plunge to couchsurf helped him make some new friends on his travels.
I ended up having two incredible experiences couch surfing, one in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and another one in Missoula, Montana. And just wonderful people and so cool, made me dinner and we talked till late into the night and they showed me around town. And it was just, so much better than any hotel experience or anything else. And I'm looking forward to doing more of that in the future.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right to ditch the familiarity of a standard hotel or motel and try couch surfing is definitely a something that if you achieve it, I suppose you can really gain some new confidence. It's I think a lot of people are concerned that, or maybe they feel that they just don't want to take the risk. But obviously it worked out really well for you, so that's excellent. Tell me a bit more about the kinds of conversations you had with your couch surfing hosts. What was that like?
The first one especially was kind of funny because I had reached out to her and said, this is who I am and I'm coming from Washington and I'm driving and this is whatever. And I included a link to my blog at the time and said, this is who I am. You can find out more about me if it makes you feel more comfortable with having me in your home. And I come to find out when I was talking to her later that she wasn't really interested in having someone couch surf at their house that night. She was kind of like, I'm tired and this and that. And she clicked on my blog and she started reading through it. And all of a sudden she was like, oh, you're interested in minimalism and you're talking about intentional living and you're doing this. And, oh, you're talking about this book. And I just read this book. And so she saw that we had all these things in common. And so it was just great that as we were talking, we had so much to talk about. So I think that worked in my favor, that I had an online presence that she could relate to.
Advertise yourself a little, so to speak.
Exactly. And so that was a big one. And I actually keep in contact with both of the people that I couch surfed at their house, through Facebook and stuff.
Oh, great.
And the next one, I actually reached out to a family and they had said, yeah, you can stay with us. And then last minute, like the day before I was supposed to go there, they said, hey, sorry, we had some extra family come in that we didn't know about. We don't have room, but we have a friend who's been interested in trying, hosting someone for the first time. Would you be interested, if we connect you with him? And, again, it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, he wasn't on the website. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm taking a risk with this, but I felt comfortable with who they were based on what I saw, that I went on their recommendation and I contacted him, and he was like, yeah, here's my address. And when you get there, if I'm not there, the door will be open.
Oh,
I was
brilliant.
like, wow, you are way more trusting than I am. And it just worked out beautifully. Like, he showed me around town. It was in Missoula, Montana. And again, we had so much in common that, I actually ended up spending the weekend there, and we just hung out, and it was like we had been friends for a long time, just based on our mutual interests and how we thought about life. And so it was, maybe I lucked out. I don't know, but I also am a big believer that, when you put certain things out into the world, that you find other people that align with those things.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. It's it seems to be more than coincidence, I think.
Absolutely.
But what a great experience with those two, that you could chat and get to know each other and stay connected even beyond your couch surfing experience. I'm so glad that Jeff had such great couch surfing experiences and was able to make some good and lasting friendships out of those stays. And I must give a bit of a shout out to Facebook for being such a great way to stay connected with people around the world. I wish I could find my Egyptian friend Mohammed on Facebook, although I do somehow find it kind of disturbing that Bethany's monk friend is on Facebook. I always thought that monks would be too serene to be spending time on social media, but at least that they can stay in touch that way, and that's fantastic. This also reminds me, and a little bit of a shout out to anyone who might be able to help me with this. I have a post on my blog, which I'll put in the show notes, about my missing friend. When I lived in Japan, I met the most delightful friend, Yuko, in Osaka, and a bunch of details about her are on my blog, because after I left Japan, we both changed email addresses 3 or 4 times, especially her. Japanese people used to change their email addresses every time they changed their phones, and it's hard to keep track of them. And I still miss Yuko to this very day. I think of her so often, and I just can't find her, and I wish I could. So have a look at that on my blog. Link in the show notes, and see if you can help me find Yuko. So that's all I have for you today about travel friends. Thank you so much for listening to episode 7 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast, and a big thank you to my lovely guests. So first up, we heard from Bethany Davies of flashpackerfamily.com and her fantastic stories of friends on the road. You can hear more from Bethany in episode 5, where we talked about travelling on her own and how that built up her confidence in life, which I think was a really interesting story as well. And thank you also to Jeff Sandquist of Intentionally Wandering. His website is intentionallywandering.com, or you can find his podcast, also called Intentionally Wandering. You might remember Jeff from just the last episode, in episode 6, talking about surprises in travel and exploring your own backyard. So as usual, you can find these details and more in the show notes. And for this episode, the show notes will be at notaballerina.com/07. You can get in touch with me. I would love to hear about your own special friendships you've made while you're travelling. You can tweet me at Amanda Kendall, or use the Thoughtful Travel Pod hashtag, or otherwise look up Not a Ballerina on Facebook and you'll be able to leave me a message there. Thanks so much. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.
Jackrabbit FM.
For your ears.
Who is that? Hi, podcast.